The twin suns of Krylos IV burned in the sky, painting the dusty plains gold and crimson. It was a day of great excitement for the alien people known as the Zerethians. Warriors from across the colony had gathered for the annual Vorak trial, a dangerous hunt where the bravest would attempt to tame the deadliest predator on the planet. The Vorak was a nightmare given flesh. Standing over 3 meters tall with jagged black fur, spiked ridges along its back, and glowing amber eyes, it was feared across the galaxy. It could crush armored vehicles, outrun hoverbikes, and kill with one strike of its claws. The creature was not just strong, it was smart. Most hunters never came back from the trial. But to the Zerethians, taming a Vorak was the highest honor. The beast would only submit to the strongest of hunters. If it lowered its head in submission, the warrior gained eternal glory. The crowd of aliens filled the massive arena, a natural stone pit carved from the side of a canyon. Drums pounded. The air smelled of dust, sweat, and the strange metallic scent of Vorak blood from previous hunts. And in the middle of all this, far from home, stood Ethan Cross, a human engineer from Earth. Ethan hadn't come here for any trial. He wasn't a warrior or even a fighter. He had been sent by the Interstellar Council to repair a broken communications relay in the Krylos IV colony. But when the local transport broke down, he had been delayed and somehow dragged along to this event. He stood near the edge of the arena, wearing a dusty jacket and a confused expression. He was the only human here, surrounded by towering Zerethians with curved horns, scaled skin, and bright war paint. "This is something," Ethan muttered to himself, rubbing the back of his neck. He didn't like the look of the huge steel gate at the far end of the pit. A deep voice spoke beside him. "You should not be here, human." Ethan turned to see a tall Zerethian, woman in black armor, her silver skin catching the light. Her eyes were sharp, like blades, and her long, dark hair was braided tightly. "I wasn't planning to be," Ethan replied. "Long story. I am Soraya, daughter of the High Huntmaster," she said without emotion. "Stay behind the guards when the Vorak is released. If it escapes, you will not survive." Ethan gave a weak laugh. "Thanks for the encouragement." The drums grew louder. A roar shook the arena, a deep, bone-rattling sound that made the crowd cheer. The steel gate rattled. Dust fell from the hinges. Then, with a metallic crash, it rose. The Vorak stepped into the light. Its claws dug furrows into the dirt. Its eyes glowed like molten gold. The scars across its body told of countless battles. Even the Zerethian warriors, armed with spears that could pierce steel, tensed at its presence. Soraya gripped her weapon tightly. "It will choose its opponent," she said. "The strongest will stand before it." The Vorak sniffed the air. Then, without warning, it lunged toward the first warrior. The fight was brutal. The Vorak moved faster than anything Ethan had seen, dodging spear thrusts and swiping with claws that tore through armor like paper. One by one, the warriors fell back, injured or unconscious. The crowd roared, but there was tension now. No, one had made the Vorak submit. It seemed angrier with each challenger. Then something unexpected happened. The Vorak stopped. It turned its head, and it looked directly at Ethan. Ethan froze. "Oh, no, 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 no! Don't you dare!" The Vorak growled, low and deep. It began to walk toward him, slow at first, then faster. Guards shouted in the alien tongue. Soraya stepped in front of Ethan, spear raised, but the Vorak ignored her. It was staring only at the human. "Stay back!" Soraya ordered, but Ethan couldn't move. His heart was pounding like the drums. The massive beast closed the distance, dust swirling around its claws. Ethan's mind went blank. He had no weapon, no plan. Out of pure panic, he raised his hands and blurted, Nice kitty?" For reasons he didn't understand, he made a nervous clicking sound with his tongue. the same sound he used back on Earth to call his neighbor's cat. The Vorak stopped. Its glowing eyes narrowed. Then it lowered its head. The entire arena fell silent. Ethan blinked. Wait. What? The Vorak's massive body sank to the ground, lying at his feet like a dog waiting for a command. Its amber eyes looked up at him, not with rage, but with something. Strange. Respect? Curiosity? Affection? The silence broke into gasps and shouts from the crowd. Zerithians were pointing, yelling. This was impossible. Soraya stared, her face frozen in shock. It chose you? I guess? Ethan said, still too stunned to move. Slowly, he reached out and touched the Vorak's head. The creature didn't flinch. Instead, it let out a low rumble, almost like a purr. The High Huntmaster himself entered the arena, his towering form casting a shadow over Ethan. This cannot be, the Huntmaster said in a voice that rumbled like stone. A Vorak has never chosen an outsider, especially not a fragile human. Ethan swallowed. Yeah, trust me. I'm as confused as you are. The Huntmaster looked at Soraya. Explain this. She shook her head. I cannot, Father. No human should be able to tame a Vorak. It is against everything we know. The Huntmaster's eyes narrowed. Then perhaps we must learn what makes this human different. The crowd began to chant Ethan's name. Well, their best attempt at it, half in awe, half in disbelief. Soraya stepped closer to Ethan, still studying him like he was a puzzle. This is not over, she said quietly. The Vorak's choice will change everything, and many will not accept it. Ethan glanced down at the massive beast lying calmly beside him. Yeah, I'm starting to get that feeling. Above them, the twin suns began to set, casting long shadows over the arena. The Vorak had chosen. The next morning, the Krylos 4 sky was pale blue, streaked with thin silver clouds. The colony was quieter than usual, but everywhere Ethan walked, eyes followed him. He wasn't used to being the center of attention. Back on Earth, he was just an engineer, someone who fixed broken machines and got ignored at company meetings. But here, on this alien world, people were whispering his name, or, more accurately, they were whispering a strange alien version of his name that sounded like Eitan Kraus. Ethan had been given a temporary room inside the Huntmaster's hall. It was a large building made of black stone, filled with banners showing fierce warriors and scenes of victorious hunts. Even the floor had carvings of beasts in combat, too. Ethan, it felt more like a museum crossed with a fortress. When he stepped into the main chamber, Soraya was already there, leaning against a pillar. Her black armor gleamed, and her expression was as unreadable as ever. You are late, she said. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Late for what? No one told me we had a meeting. You have one now? Soraya replied, turning on her heel. Follow. Ethan sighed. And here I was, hoping for breakfast. They walked through a long hallway until they reached an open training yard. The sun was bright here, and the ground was packed dirt. Dozens of alien warriors were training, swinging spears, practicing unarmed combat, and shooting strange energy bows. But the real attention wasn't on the warriors. It was on the massive black-furred creature lying lazily in the center of the yard, the Vorak. Ethan stopped. Shouldn't that thing be in a cage or something? Soraya shot him a cold look. It is not a thing. It is your beast. Now. Ethan blinked. My beast? No, no, no. I didn't sign up for... The Vorak lifted its head. When it saw Ethan, it let out a low, pleased rumble and walked over. Its heavy steps shook the ground. Several warriors stopped their training to watch. It stopped in front of Ethan and lowered its head again, just like it had in the arena. Then it leaned forward and nudged him with its massive snout, almost knocking him over. The crowd murmured. Some looked impressed. Others looked angry. Soraya's jaw tightened. "This is impossible," she muttered. "No Vorak should obey a human. They only follow the strongest warriors. They sense strength, not weakness." "Gee, thanks," Ethan said dryly. She crossed her arms. "You do not understand. In our culture, the Vorak chooses its master through a trial of blood. The warrior must wound the beast, survive its fury, and make it submit. You did none of these things." "Yeah, I didn't even want to be in the arena," Ethan reminded her. "It just walked up to me." Soraya's eyes narrowed. "Which makes it even more troubling." Before Ethan could respond, the High Huntmaster entered the yard. The crowd immediately straightened, standing at attention. "Human," the Huntmaster said, his deep voice echoing. "You and the Vorak will work together. There are creatures in the wild that threaten our outer settlements. You will join my daughter Soraya to hunt them." Ethan's mouth dropped open. "Wait, what? I'm not a hunter, I'm an engineer." "Then you will learn," the Huntmaster said. "The Vorak will obey only you. We have no choice." Soraya looked like she had bitten into something sour. "Father, this is dangerous. He is untrained. He will get himself killed." "Then keep him alive," the Huntmaster said simply, before walking away. As soon as he was gone, Ethan turned to Soraya. "You don't actually expect me to go chasing alien monsters, do you?" "I expect you to keep up," Soraya said flatly. "We leave in 1 hour. Get ready." Ethan groaned. This day just keeps getting better. 1 hour later, they were outside the city walls, heading toward the rocky wilderness. The Vorak padded silently beside Ethan, its amber eyes scanning the horizon. Ethan glanced at Soraya. "So, what exactly are we hunting?" "Not hunting," she corrected. "Tracking. The Vorak's escape during the trial has drawn wild predators close to the colony. If we do not push them back, they will attack farms and settlements." "Right," Ethan said. "And you're sure I'm not just bait?" Soraya didn't answer, which made him very nervous. They walked for hours, moving across jagged cliffs and dry grasslands. The sun was hot, but the air was sharp and cool. Ethan kept glancing at the Vorak, still half expecting it to attack him. But it stayed close, sometimes brushing against him with its huge body. Finally, the Vorak stopped. Its ears twitched, and it sniffed the air. Soraya crouched, scanning the ground. "Tracks," she said. "Four-legged, heavy, recent." She pointed to a series of deep claw marks in the dirt. Ethan looked at them and whistled. "Those are big." "They belong to a Kravix," Soraya said. "Fast, strong, very dangerous." "Great," Ethan muttered. "Anything else you want to add? Like maybe it breathes fire?" "No," she said, then paused. "But it can leap 20 meters." Ethan groaned. "Perfect." They followed the tracks into a narrow canyon. The walls rose high on both sides, casting shadows over the ground. It felt quiet. Too quiet. Ethan slowed. You sure this is a good idea? This looks like the kind of place you'd get ambushed in." Soraya gave him a sharp look. "Stay alert." The Vorak's ears twitched again. It growled low in its throat. Then, without warning, something large and fast dropped from above. The Kravix hit the ground in front of them, kicking up a cloud of dust. It was a monstrous creature, green-scaled, with long limbs ending in hooked claws and a mouth full of needle-like teeth. Its yellow eyes locked onto them. It hissed. Soraya moved instantly, spinning her spear into a ready position. "Stay behind me!" But the Vorak roared and charged. The two beasts collided with bone-shaking force. Claws slashed, teeth snapped, and dust filled the air. Ethan stumbled back, watching in shock. Is this normal for you people?" he yelled over the noise. Soraya ignored him, running to flank the Kravix. Her spear struck its side, drawing. A sharp screech from the creature, but the Kravix spun and knocked her away with a powerful swipe. "Soraya!" Ethan shouted. The Kravix lunged for her, but before it could strike, the Vorak slammed into it, biting deep into its shoulder. The Kravix shrieked and thrashed, but the Vorak held on. Ethan's heart pounded. Without thinking, he shouted, "Get it, boy!" the same way he used to cheer on his neighbor's dog. To his complete disbelief, the Vorak responded with a burst of strength, throwing the Kravix to the ground and pinning it. With a final bone-cracking bite, it ended the fight. The canyon fell silent. Soraya stood slowly, breathing hard. Her armor was scratched, but she was alive. She stared at Ethan. "You commanded it," Ethan blinked. "I just yelled. I didn't think it would listen." "It should not have," she said quietly. "This bond is real. The Vorak sees you as its leader." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. "I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing." Soraya didn't answer. She just kept staring at him with the same mix of suspicion and something else. Something like respect, though she didn't seem ready to admit it. They dragged the Kravix's body to a safe spot and marked the location for a retrieval team. As they began the long walk back to the colony, the sun dipped lower in the sky. Ethan glanced at the Vorak, which padded calmly beside him again. "You know," he said. "I think I'm starting to like this guy." Soraya gave him a sharp look. "Do not grow too comfortable. The Vorak is still a predator. If your bond fails, it will kill you." Ethan smirked faintly. "Guess I'll just have to make sure it doesn't." For a moment, Soraya almost smiled, but only for a moment. That night, word of the hunt spread quickly through the colony. The human who had tamed the Vorak had also defeated a Kravix, something even veteran warriors struggled to do, but not everyone was pleased. In the shadows of the Huntmaster's hall, a tall, scarred Zerithian warrior watched Ethan from a distance. His name was Derek, and his pride burned like fire. "That Vorak should have been mine," he growled to himself. "I will prove the human is unworthy." His eyes followed Ethan until the human disappeared into his quarters. The wind howled across the cliffs of Krylos IV, carrying the scent of dust and distant storms. 3 days had passed since Ethan and Soraya hunted the Kravix, but the colony was still buzzing with talk of the human who had tamed the Vorak. Some were impressed. Others were angry. Ethan didn't care much about the politics. He was still trying to understand why the Vorak had chosen him. The creature, now named Brutus by Ethan, despite Soraya insisting it was disrespectful, followed him everywhere. It slept outside his quarters, guarded him when he worked, and even blocked the door when someone tried to visit unannounced. For a predator that could tear him in half, Brutus was surprisingly calm, at least around him. That morning, Soraya came to his quarters with her usual no-nonsense expression. "Get ready," she said. Ethan sat up from his bed. "Oh, good morning to you too. What's going on?" "There have been more sightings," she replied. 2 Voraks, wild ones near the river settlements, and other predators are moving closer to our farms. The Huntmaster has ordered us to track them." Ethan groaned. "More hunting?" "Tracking," she corrected. "But there is more." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Some believe your bond with Brutus is connected to these sightings, that the Voraks are drawn here because of you." Ethan frowned. "That doesn't even make sense. Why would they care about me?" "That," Soraya said, "is what we must find out." They set out before noon, traveling across the rocky grasslands. The Vorak padded beside Ethan like a shadow, its eyes constantly scanning the terrain. Soraya led the way, moving with the quiet grace of a hunter. She rarely spoke, but her eyes kept flicking toward Ethan, as if trying to figure out a puzzle she didn't like. After hours of walking, they reached the Tirac Gorge, a wide crack in the land where a river rushed far below. The walls were steep, and strange glowing plants grew along the edges. "This is where the sightings were reported," Soraya said. "Stay alert." "Yeah, I've learned that's code for something is about to try to kill us," Ethan muttered. The Vorak stopped suddenly. Its ears twitched. Ethan followed its gaze and saw movement up ahead. Two massive shapes emerged from behind the rocks. Voraks, wild ones. Their fur was darker than Brutus's, their eyes sharper, and their bodies lean with hunger. Ethan's breath caught. Okay, wow. They're even scarier up close. The wild Voraks didn't attack. Instead, they stared at Brutus, making low rumbling sounds. Brutus answered with a rumble of his own. "They're talking?" Ethan guessed. "Communicating," Soraya confirmed. "But Voraks do not speak to each other unless they are part of the same pack." Brutus stepped forward, slow and calm, as if greeting old friends. The wild Voraks didn't seem hostile, but they didn't seem friendly either. Then, without warning, one of them let out a sharp, almost commanding growl. Brutus's body stiffened. "What was that?" Ethan whispered. Soraya's expression was grim. "It told him to leave you." Ethan's chest tightened. "And if he doesn't?" Before she could answer, the wild Voraks lunged. Not at Ethan, but at Brutus. The three beasts crashed together, in an explosion of snarls, claws, and teeth. Ethan's instincts screamed at him to run, but Brutus was in trouble. "Brutus, get back!" he shouted. The Vorak twisted mid-fight and broke away from the others, moving to stand between Ethan and the attackers. The wild Voraks hissed, then backed away a few steps, their eyes locked on Ethan. It was almost like they were studying him. Then they turned and leapt away, disappearing into the gorge. Ethan let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "What just happened?" "They came for you," Soraya said simply. "And when Brutus refused to give you up, they left." Ethan frowned. "Why would they want me?" Soraya didn't answer immediately. She was staring at something carved into the rock near the gorge wall. "Look," she said. Ethan stepped closer and saw ancient markings, worn but still visible. The carving showed tall figures with Voraks at their sides. Some of the figures looked like Zerithians, but others were different. Shorter, rounder heads, familiar in a way Ethan couldn't place, until it hit him. "They're human," he whispered. Soraya's voice was quiet. "These carvings are thousands of years old. Humans were never recorded on Krylos 4. And yet," Ethan traced one of the figures with his finger. "You think this means humans and Voraks worked together before?" "It is possible," she said. "Perhaps your species once had a bond with them. A bond we have forgotten." Ethan stared at Brutus, who was calmly licking a claw like the fight never happened. "That would explain why he picked me." Soraya nodded slowly, but her eyes were troubled. "If this is true, others will not accept it. Some will see you as a threat to our traditions." Ethan sighed. "Yeah, I'm starting to get that feeling." They decided to return to the colony with the news, but their path was blocked. Halfway back, they found themselves in a rocky pass, and standing in the middle of it was Derek, the scarred warrior Ethan had seen in the shadows before. Behind him stood three other heavily armed Zerithians. "This ends now." "Human," Derek growled. Soraya stepped forward. "Derek, stand aside," he sneered. "This outsider has shamed our people. The Vorak should have chosen me. I will prove the bond is a lie by killing the beast and the human." Ethan's stomach dropped. "Wow, you really go straight to murder, huh?" Derek didn't reply. He raised his weapon and charged. The fight was chaos. Brutus roared and slammed into one of the attackers, sending him flying into the rocks. Soraya spun her spear in a blur, parrying Derek's strikes. Ethan had no weapon, but he wasn't about to just stand there. He grabbed a fallen warrior's staff and swung wildly at the nearest enemy. It wasn't elegant, but it knocked the attacker off balance long enough for Brutus to take him down. Derek and Sariah clashed fiercely. Sparks flew as their weapons met, but Derek was strong, too strong. He knocked Sariah's spear from her hands and raised his blade for a killing blow. Without thinking, Ethan shouted, "Brutus, stop him!" The Vorak moved like lightning. It slammed into Derek, sending both of them rolling across the ground. The alien warrior scrambled up, his eyes wide with rage, but now Brutus was between him and Ethan. "You would use a beast to fight for you?" Derek spat. Ethan held his ground. "No, he fights with me." Something in his tone made Derek hesitate. But only for a second, then he snarled and retreated, motioning for his warriors to follow. "This isn't over, human," he promised before disappearing into the rocks. Silence settled over the pass. Ethan's arms ached, and his heart was still racing. Sariah picked up her spear and looked at him. "You could have been killed." "Yeah," Ethan said with a shaky laugh. "But we weren't." She studied him for a moment, then nodded slightly. "Perhaps you are not as useless as I thought." Ethan grinned. "Coming from you, that's high praise." Brutus gave a low rumble and pressed his head against Ethan's shoulder. For the first time, Sariah didn't look away when she saw it. As they continued their journey back to the colony, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about the carvings. If humans had once walked this planet alongside Voreks, what had happened to them? The jungle of Velara was not quiet anymore. Once its sounds were just birds, insects, and wind in the leaves. Now there was something else, something heavy moving between the trees, something that made even the native predators stay away. That something was Karoth, the so-called deadliest alien beast in the galaxy, and it walked beside Ethan Cole, a human who never expected to survive this long. Ethan adjusted his grip on the strange alien spear Lyra had given him. He wasn't sure if he was holding it the right way, but Karoth didn't seem to care. The beast kept its glowing yellow eyes forward, scanning the jungle for threats. Lyra walked behind them, still not trusting the situation. Her mind kept repeating the same thought. Why him? She had seen Karoth rip armored soldiers in half. She had seen it crush a starship hull with its bare claws. Yet here it was, following this unarmored, fragile human like a loyal hound. "You still haven't told me," Ethan said, looking over his shoulder at her. "Told you what?" Lyra asked. "Why this thing hasn't eaten me yet?" Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Because you're either very lucky, or it has a reason." They had been walking for hours, following an invisible trail Karoth seemed to know. Every now and then, the beast would stop, sniff the air, and let out a low growl before moving on. Ethan noticed the growls seemed deeper the further they walked. Suddenly, Karoth froze. Its ears twitched. It turned its head slowly toward the right. Lyra's hand went to the energy pistol on her belt. From the shadows, several tall figures stepped out, Valoran hunters. They were armed with spears made of bone and metal, their eyes locked on Karoth. One of them pointed at Ethan and spoke in their harsh, clicking language. Lyra understood enough to know the meaning. Kill the human. Take the beast, Karoth. Reacted before anyone could move. It roared, a deep, shaking sound that made Ethan's ears ring. The hunters froze. Even they knew what Karoth could do. But then something strange happened. Karoth stepped forward, not to attack, but to place itself between Ethan and the hunters. The massive beast lowered its head slightly, like it was shielding him. Lyra's eyes widened. "It's protecting you." The hunters didn't take the hint. One threw a spear. In a blur, Karoth caught it in midair and snapped it in two like it was a twig. That was enough. The hunters slowly backed away, muttering curses in their language before disappearing into the jungle. After they were gone, Ethan finally let out the breath he'd been holding. Okay, that was new. Lyra looked at Karoth with a mix of fear and curiosity. This isn't random. That beast chose you for a reason, Ethan. And what reason would that be? I don't know, she admitted. But I think it's leading us somewhere. They set up camp for the night in a small clearing. Ethan tried to rest, but Karoth stayed awake, scanning the darkness. It didn't sleep. It didn't even blink much. It was like it was expecting something or someone to find them. Lyra sat by the fire, her eyes reflecting the flames. When I was a child, she began softly, there was a story about Karoth. It was said to be a guardian of something, ancient, something hidden on this planet. Ethan raised an eyebrow. A treasure? Not gold, not jewels. Something powerful. Too powerful for any one race to control. And you think that's why it's with me? I think, Lyra said slowly, it's not just with you. I think it's choosing you to carry something. And if that's true, the whole galaxy will want you dead. Later that night, a sound woke Ethan. Not a growl, not footsteps, a whisper. He sat up and looked around. Lyra was asleep. Karoth was still watching the darkness. But the whisper came again, this time from inside his own mind. Human. Follow. Ethan's heart pounded. He looked at Karoth, and in that moment, the beast turned its head toward him. Its eyes glowed brighter than before. Without a sound, it stood and began walking into the trees. Ethan followed. Lyra didn't wake. The jungle seemed different now. The air was colder, the plants darker. They walked for what felt like hours until they reached a massive stone structure half buried in the earth. It was ancient, covered in vines and strange markings. Ethan had no idea what it was, but Karoth walked straight to a doorway at the base. The whisper in Ethan's mind grew stronger. Inside, only you. He stepped forward, but before entering, he glanced back. Lyra was standing at the edge of the clearing, awake and looking furious. You followed it alone? She snapped. Do you have any idea how dangerous this is? Before Ethan could answer, the doorway behind him began to glow with blue light. Karoth stepped aside, letting him pass. Inside, the air felt heavy. Strange symbols glowed on the walls, and in the center of the chamber sat a pedestal. On it rested a small, crystal-like object pulsing with light. Ethan didn't know why, but he felt drawn to it. He stepped forward, reached out, and touched it. The moment his fingers made contact, the room flashed white. Images filled his mind. Wars, alien empires, planets burning, and then peace. A voice spoke. Guardian chosen. Burden accepted. When the light faded, the crystal was gone. It was no longer on the pedestal. It was inside him. Lyra ran in just as Karoth let out another roar. What happened? She demanded. I think I took it, Ethan said, placing a hand on his chest. I don't know what it is, but I think Karoth wanted me to have it. Lyra's face turned pale. Ethan, do you understand what you've just done? Before he could answer, the ground shook. Distant booms echoed through the jungle. Karoth growled low, eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the doorway. They've found us, Lyra whispered, and now they'll stop at nothing to take you. The alien city was silent. No traders in the markets. No laughter from the children. The great crystal towers, which usually glowed bright blue, were now dim and lifeless. The reason was simple. The Bloodstorm beast had returned. Orcs stood on the balcony of the guest hall, looking out over the city. His beast, Kor, stood beside him, growling low. Its scales shimmered like wet steel, and its red eyes scanned the horizon. The air was heavy. Even the wind felt like it carried a warning. Vera, the alien woman who had once doubted him, now stood close by. Her voice was quiet but urgent. "It's here. The beast you defeated in the wild was a young one. This is the mother." Auric turned his head slowly. "How big?" Vera's eyes were full of fear. "Bigger than anything you've seen. Stronger than Kor. If it reaches the city, no wall will hold it." Auric looked at Kor. The alien beast tilted its head as if listening. Then it rumbled deep in its chest. Auric didn't need words to understand. Kor wanted to fight. The warning. The city leaders gathered in the Hall of Judgment. It was a huge circular chamber, its ceiling so high it disappeared into shadows. The council elder, a tall alien with silver skin and long, thin horns, looked at Auric. "Human," the elder said, his voice echoing, "your bond with the death beast is strong, but this fight, it is not yours." Auric crossed his arms. "It's mine if your people can't win." "It." A murmur spread across the chamber. Many of the aliens still didn't fully trust him, but they had seen what he and Kor could do. Vera stepped forward. "He saved my life. He saved yours. If anyone can stop the mother beast, it's them." The elder studied Auric for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. "Then go. The city will pray." Auric turned and walked out without another word. He didn't need prayers. He needed a plan. The hunt begins. The plains outside the city were endless and dry, stretching far into the crimson sky. Dust swirled in the wind, and the ground trembled with each step the mother beast took. They found it near the old ruins, a massive creature. 3 times the size of Kor, with black armor plates and glowing yellow eyes. It roared, a sound so deep it shook the stones. Birds scattered into the sky, fleeing for their lives. Kor snarled and stepped forward, his tail lashing behind him. Auric pulled his rifle from his back, not because he thought it would kill the thing, but because he might need to distract it. "All right, partner," Auric said quietly, glancing at Kor. "We've done this before." "Just never something this big," the mother beast charged. The battle. The ground exploded as its claws struck the earth. Kor leaped sideways, dodging the attack, and slammed his body into the mother beast's side. The impact was like 2 tanks, colliding. The shockwave knocked Auric back several steps. Auric raised his rifle and fired at the beast's eyes. The shot sparked off the armored plates, but one bullet caught its softer skin just above the eye. The mother beast roared in rage, swinging its massive head toward him. "Kor! Now!" Auric shouted. Kor lunged, his jaws clamping onto the beast's neck. They rolled across the ground, tearing up dirt and stone. Auric sprinted closer, firing again, trying to keep the monster's attention away from Kor's weaker spots. The mother beast slammed Kor into a boulder, shattering it. Kor yelped, but refused to let go. Blood sprayed from both creatures as they fought, the air filled with the sound of snarls, roars, and breaking stone. The turning point, Auric saw it, a gap in the beast's armor on its underbelly. It was small, but it was there. If he could get close enough. He dropped his rifle and pulled the plasma blade Vera had given him. Its edge glowed white-hot. He ran toward the struggling beasts, sliding under the mother's massive arm, just as it tried to crush Kor. With one sharp thrust, Auric drove the blade into the gap. The beast screamed, thrashing wildly. Auric was thrown across the ground, rolling hard, but the damage was done. The wound was deep, and glowing blood poured out. Kor used the moment to clamp his jaws around the beast's throat. There was a sickening crack, and the huge monster collapsed. The fight was over. The aftermath silence fell over the plains. Dust slowly settled back to the ground. Auric sat on his knees, panting. His arms shook, and blood, some his, some the beast's, stained his clothes. Kor limped toward him, his breathing heavy. Auric reached out and rested his hand on the beast's head. "We did it," he whispered. "We actually did it." From the ridge, Vera appeared, running toward them. She dropped to her knees beside Auric, looking at him with wide eyes. "You're insane," she said. "But you saved us all." Behind her, the city's warriors began to gather, staring in awe at the dead mother beast. No one spoke for a long time. Then, slowly, they began to bow, not just to Kor, but to Auric. The choice. That night, the city was alive again. Fires burned in celebration. Music echoed in the streets. The council elder approached Auric in the square. "You could stay," the elder said. "You and your beast. Live among us. Be one of us." Auric looked at Kor, then at Vera. He smiled faintly. "Tempting. But I'm human. My place is out there. And besides..." He glanced toward the stars. "Something tells me this won't be the last time trouble finds me." Vera stepped forward, placing a small crystal pendant in his hand. "Then take this, so you'll never be alone, no matter where you go." Auric nodded. "Thanks for everything." Epilogue. At dawn, Auric and Kor stood at the edge of the city. Looking out at the open horizon, the alien sun rose, painting the sky in gold and red. Kor gave a low growl, not of warning, but of readiness. Auric smiled. "All right, partner. Let's see what's next."